the sharp crack of a boot against fragile bone, echoing through the dusty barracks like a thunderclap that stops time itself. Sarah's world exploded in a blur of pain, her vision swimming as she crumpled to the cold, unforgiving ground, tasting blood and betrayal in that single savage moment. But this wasn't just any recruit facing the horrors of boot camp. Oh no, this was the beginning of a reckoning that would bring giants to their knees. And as the stars danced in her eyes, she whispered a silent prayer, wondering if her hidden strength would finally break free. Sarah had always been the quiet fighter, the girl from a small town in Ohio who dreamed of proving herself in a world built for the unbreakable. Her father, General Harlan Reeves, had raised her on stories of valor and sacrifice, but he'd begged her not to enlist, fearing the brutality that had scarred his own soul during Vietnam. Yet Sarah, with her mother's fierce spirit burning in her veins, signed up anyway, hiding her lineage behind a fake last name to earn her stripes on her own terms. The training was hell from day one, endless push-ups in the pouring rain, the sting of mud in her eyes, the constant roar of Sergeant Malone's voice slicing through the air like a whip. He was a man hardened by too many tours, his eyes cold as steel, pushing them all to the brink because that's what made soldiers, or so he claimed. But for Sarah, every grueling march and shouted insult was a step toward honoring the family legacy she kept secret, even as doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. And just when she thought she could endure it all, the real storm was about to hit. The unit was a ragtag group of recruits, each carrying their own invisible burdens, young men and women from broken homes, chasing redemption or escape in the uniform's promise. Sarah bonded with them over whispered conversations in the dead of night, sharing laughs about cafeteria slop that tasted like cardboard and dreams of home-cooked meals that felt worlds away. There was Jake, the lanky kid from Texas who missed his little sister, and Maria, the tough Latina who hid her tears behind jokes. They became her anchor, a makeshift family in the chaos, pulling each other through the exhaustion that made bones ache and spirits falter. But Sergeant Malone saw weakness in their unity, targeting Sarah especially as if he could smell her quiet resolve like prey. "You're soft, recruit. You'll get your squad killed out there," he'd bellow, his breath hot and sour, forcing her to run laps until her legs screamed for mercy. Deep down, Sarah wondered if he was right, if her heart was too tender for this life of steel and fire. But hold on, because one fateful afternoon, everything was about to shatter in ways no one could predict. It started like any other drill, the sun beating down on the obstacle course like an unrelenting enemy, sweat soaking through their fatigues and turning the dirt to mud underfoot. Sarah pushed forward, her muscles burning as she scaled the wall, the rough ropes biting into her palms like angry teeth. Malone paced like a predator, his voice a constant barrage. "Faster!" "You're pathetic." She slipped once, catching herself just in time, but that was all it took to ignite his fury. In a flash of rage that seemed to come from nowhere, he lunged, his boot connecting with her head in a sickening thud that sent her flying. The world tilted, pain exploding like fireworks behind her eyes, warm blood trickling down her temple as gasps rippled through the unit. Jake rushed to her side, his hands trembling as he helped her sit up, while Maria shouted for a medic, her voice cracking with fear. Sarah's mind raced through the haze. Was this the end of her dream, crushed under the weight of one man's cruelty? But as darkness threatened to pull her under, a distant rumble grew louder, hinting at the justice that was racing toward them. Minutes ticked by in agonizing slow motion, the unit frozen in shock as medics swarmed, their urgent voices blending with the recruits' murmurs of outrage. Sarah lay there, her head throbbing like a war drum, flashes of her father's proud face mixing with the sting of humiliation. She had sacrificed so much, nights away from her family's warm kitchen, the comfort of her mother's hugs, all to forge her own path without the shadow of privilege. But in that vulnerability, a deeper connection stirred. Jake knelt beside her, whispering, "Hang in there, Sarah. We're with you." His words a lifeline in the storm. Maria held her hand, squeezing tight, a silent vow of solidarity that warmed her soul amid the chill of betrayal. Malone stood defiant, barking orders as if nothing had happened, but his face paled when the roar of helicopters sliced the air, dust swirling like a tornado as 3 Blackhawks descended. The doors burst open, and out stepped 3 towering figures in crisp uniforms adorned with stars. Generals, their presence commanding the very ground they walked on. Who were they, and why had they come? The answer was about to unravel everything. General Harlan Reeves led the charge, his eyes locking onto Sarah with a mix of fury and heartbreak that could melt steel. Flanked by his brothers-in-arms, Generals Ellis and Thorne, uncles Sarah adored like fathers, they stormed the field, their boots thundering like Judgment Day. "Stand down!" Harlan roared, his voice echoing across the base, freezing Malone in place like a statue of guilt. The unit watched in stunned silence as the truth spilled out. Sarah wasn't just any recruit. She was the daughter of legends, the niece of heroes who had bled for this country. Harlan knelt beside her, his rough hand gentle on her cheek, whispering, "I'm so sorry, kiddo. I should have protected you better." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, not from pain, but from the raw flood of love and regret washing over them both. Ellis and Thorne confronted Malone, their words sharp as blades. "This ends now. Abuse has no place in our ranks." The sergeant stammered excuses, but it was too late. The general's arrival was a tidal wave of accountability, born from years of silent sacrifice and unbreakable family bonds. But what would happen next, as the unit teetered on the edge of collapse? In a whirlwind of commands, the generals shut down the unit on the spot, ordering an immediate investigation that would expose the rot within. Recruits were reassigned, Malone stripped of his rank and led away in disgrace, his empire crumbling like sand. Sarah was airlifted to a hospital, her family by her side, the helicopter's thrum a soothing lullaby after the chaos. In the quiet recovery room, scented with antiseptic and fresh flowers from her squad mates, Harlan confessed his fears. "I pushed you away from this life because I knew its darkness. But you taught me strength comes from the heart, not just the fight." Sarah squeezed his hand, her voice soft but steady. "Dad, I needed to find my own way. And now we face it together." Jake and Maria visited, sharing stories that wove them all closer, a tapestry of resilience forged in fire. The experience scarred her, but it also healed old wounds, reminding everyone that true heroism lies in vulnerability and connection. As Sarah healed, she returned to service on her terms, inspiring reforms that protected countless others. And in the end, what started as a brutal kick became a catalyst for change, proving that even in the harshest battles, love and justice always find a way to prevail.